Good over there. Okay. Good morning and welcome to DualiTEA. So we're gonna just get right on into it. Well, good morning again because I'm awkward and I forgot exactly what I was gonna get into once I said that. So happy 222 day, February 2nd, 2022. First podcast of the year, which I thought I did a podcast in January, but jokes is on me because me and Montana actually did it in December about New Year's. So this is actually the first podcast of the year. So here we are. So something that I was thinking about and that I was just talking to Kenny about is like leading up to this podcast and this day to day, I was thinking like, I'm definitely going to do a podcast this Wednesday. I said I was going to space out my podcast a little bit because like a lot of life stuff was happening and I needed to be kind of on that and doing that. And, I was like, all right, well, I'm definitely going to do a podcast on Wednesday, February 22nd, 2022. So I'm like, all right, well, what do I want to talk about? Like, what do I want to speak? What do I want to bring into existence? Like, what is it that I am like, feeling? Because if you're familiar with, if you've come onto the podcast or if we've discussed it in person, a way that I go about this podcast is I'll sit with myself and if I'm doing it by myself, I'll sit with myself and ask, what is it that is coming up for me? And then also, what is it that, I feel like is a general topic that is coming up for quite a few people, and just kind of go with that and allow that to be easeful so that it's the most present thing. So whatever conversation, whether it be with myself or if I have a guest, I'll do the same thing, same exercise just with them. And we'll kind of like talk and we'll see like what we're both feeling and what's coming up for us and things of that sort. So, and then from there, we'll find a middle ground and talk about that topic so that the conversation is organic and it feels good and it's like flow where you don't have to go into your mind and retrieve things. Because once we start thinking, that's like when we kind of lose a lot of like the juice of the moment, right? Like that we're here right now and this is how I feel in this moment. When we start thinking about memories and it's like forced or like the fact, or not even memories, because like you could sit here and organically a memory could come up, but I mean more on like scripted. Like if you have it written down, what I'll do is like I'll put key points. I used to do that all the time. Like Kenny will tell you, I brought a piece of paper, I would put key points on it, I would not look at it once. But just the act of actually writing it down would help it be in my head. And then sometimes I would look at it, if I felt like either I was getting far from the point or I wanted to remember and stay grounded in what it is that I'm talking about. So today's topic in which I'm talking about is going to be on triggers. And so the title is The Truth on Triggers and Identity Crisis. So I didn't want to write crises, so forgive me for the grammar. But yeah, so the reason why these are topics that I wanted to talk about is because recently I've been feeling like super triggered, like about so many things. And it's something that I noticed was like a theme, and a lot of people that I've been like talking to and have been like close to me have also been experiencing. I mean, it's hard to not be triggered in this day and age and just the space of life and things going on, but I feel like it's been even more so. So like you sprinkle in the fact that it's a Mercury retrograde, which is giving that kind of balance of communications and electronics and things having to be slowed down. Then you throw in the fact that there was a snowstorm, another factor of things having to be slowed down and not everything kind of maybe being up to speed, especially if you're from the city, So having to slow down could bring a lot of like frustration to people, especially city folk. Like if you walking behind a tourist and they're walking real slow, like you'll get someone's blood pressure up real fast like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the same thing happens when it's other things around us that are choosing to make us slow down. But something I think that is important to remember, if we're getting triggered, for example, like that, there's a person in front of us that's making us slow down, whether that's in a vehicle or whether that's walking, if we're late, not to be like a jerk, but like that's your fault. You know what I'm saying? That's not that person's fault. If you're not late, maybe you're supposed to really like sit back and kind of like observe something. You know, maybe someone's walking slower and you happen to walk behind them at that one particular moment. Out of all hundreds and millions of moments and people you could have walked behind, you chose to walk behind that person for a moment because maybe you're supposed to take a deep breath and like actually slow down in such a high paced world that we live in. Maybe you're supposed to look around. Maybe you're supposed to take a deep breath, look at the clouds, look up at the buildings or wherever you're at, you know, and enjoy something. Same thing goes with a car. You know, if you're like, beep, 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 like I need to get around you, I'm in a rush. Like, if you're late, that's your fault. Like, you should have left earlier. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying that as a person who does go late to things. So it's not just you, it's me too. So I'm kind of saying that to myself. I mean, as I do with everything that I talk about on here and like in life, but you know, it the point is to explore these triggers when we're looking at them. You know, it's so easy to get mad at the bus that we just passed, you know, for driving past us. But to actually sit and be grateful that, you know, maybe you got on that bus and maybe that bus, like, God forbid, was going to get into a car accident. And the reason you missed that bus was, like, for a divine reason, divine intervention. Like, if you know you did your best, you woke up, you did what you needed to do, even if you're late. If you know that you did your best with whatever the case is, like, that's all you can do for a situation. Then you kind of, you know, people call it different things. Like, I was talking about it yesterday with a good friend of mine, and he was saying, like, some people call it, like, let go and let God, and other people call it, divine intervention or the universe, like, or then there's the Tao, you know, in the more Chinese belief systems, and, like, finding the balance of just, like, giving your all and doing everything that you can do, and then just, like, leaving that room, you know, for just leaving the space with no expectation. For example, when it snowed, I had parked on the right side of the block, so I got towed in, and I had gotten out to the car a little bit later than anticipated. So the sun was coming down, and the snow was still powdery and everything, so it was cool. You know, it was still, like, not that heavy, but then the bottom, like, over by the left side of my car was all, like, packed snow because of the plow. So I'm over there, and I'm what I tell you, I'm like shoveling my little heart out. You know, I'm shoveling. It's like an hour and a half of me shoveling. I'm getting in my car. It's still, because I have like a regular standard car, so it's like not great in the snow. I could also do for some new tires. So I'm like trying to get out, and it's just not getting me out, you know. And I just, like, after I would say like an hour, 40 minutes, I'm just like leaning on the shovel. And mind you, like, throughout this time, I had noticed that there was a woman looking at me in the window, and I was like complaining about it. Like, I was on the phone with my girlfriend. I'm like, yo, like, why is this woman looking at me? Like, and then even when I wasn't on the phone, I was just like, why is this woman looking at me? And then the last thing I said, that I took a deep breath before I went to, like, sit in my car for a second. And I'm like, if you're gonna look at me through the window, like, you better want to come out here and help me. Like, I don't understand, you know? And she didn't do that. She was living her life. And all of a sudden, some human just, like, came out of left field with a snowblower, like somebody's dad, I don't know. And they just come over with the snowblower, and he doesn't say anything to me. And it was just like, I was like, either he doesn't speak English, or he's just really just not even trying. He's just like, yo, let me just get you out. Don't even worry about it. I don't want nothing for. I was like, thank you so much. And he was just like he didn't really say much. And that's like when I got to that point, it was like, not only was I complaining, I was like, that was probably the wife of the man, you know, that she was probably like, you know, she could have been. I'm not going to say probably because I'm not going to assume, but she might have even been the reason that he came out. You know, I don't know the reason. All I know is that I gave it my all. And I was like, I only sat down in my car to have a sip of water and just, like, regulate my breathing, you know, and get a little warm. And from that happening is like, I didn't let my triggers or the things that were coming up although, like, did I want to go back in the house? Absolutely. I actually didn't have to go anywhere. Like, I didn't have plans to leave my house. I had plans to finish packing up my stuff because I was moving. And I'm like, okay, I don't have to go anywhere, but I know that when I do, if I don't do this now, I'm going to be slipping and sliding on ice because it's going to freeze over after today. So I gave my all. I put my heart and soul out into that shoveling, and then, you know, the universe seen that, and I believe, you know, kind of granted me for it in a good way, like paid it forward, which I didn't even expect. I was just like I'm like sitting in the car like low key tearing up the fact that this guy's like helping me, because it's like I've been having this experience recently where it's like independence versus community, or codependence in a way, but not in a negative connotation. So like finding the balance between the two, because we live in a world where we're in this like hyper independent based, like we have to all be super different, and not only are we different, but we have to like provide for ourselves, or else we really didn't accomplish anything, and we have to live on our own and do our own thing and do everything on our own, and like that's how we're like really tough and strong and like super stubborn. And it's so interesting how, you know, this concept has come along, and if we look at like the colonists coming in that way, is like it's very that way, you know, conquering. Like, I have to conquer this on my own. I got to go conquer and find new land. I got to go conquer this. But if you look at what life was like prior to that, if you look at, you know, more of the indigenous ways across the world, like not only in the Americas, but across the world, like we lived in tribes and we lived in community. So these different instances like that, like I'm over here, you know, not because I was prideful that I needed to just do it on my own. It's just like it was nobody else's problem. Like I lived on my own. Like I was just like, I'm gonna go shovel my car. Like I'm not gonna ask somebody to shovel my car. I'm gonna just go shovel it, and that's where I'm at. So I was at that point, but even in that point, I was able to be humbled and appreciate the community that was around me that I didn't even know was around me. Like I've never even seen this person prior to that. And it was like the day or two before, like two days before I was about to move out of this neighborhood. So it's so interesting how like the universe shows up for us like that. And I was having this big, like, you know, kind of experience with not my identity. Like I wrote identity crisis just because of the literal definition. It fit the bill with like the topic at hand, fit the bill with and like that kind of tying in with triggers, because I just know that, you know, identity crisis gets such a negative connotation. It's so much like triggers like, oh my God, you triggered me. But a lot of times we're saying we're triggered or you're triggering me, and we're completely missing the point. Like, you're triggering me, we need to just erase that out of our vocabulary, because I am triggered is what's happening, right? You are triggered. No, like, yes, everybody can have an effect on you. Like, we all affect each other, whether we want to believe that or not, we do. But we are the ones that, like, carry that. Like, if we didn't have something to be triggered within us, someone behaving some way or something happening wouldn't affect or trigger us. Like that is a two-way street. You know what I'm saying? Like you need to have something in order for it to be activated by somebody else. So is that person really triggering you, or are you triggered? You know, and the reason why I use that particular language is because it's accountability, right? And not blame. When we say like you're triggering me, it could kind of get misconstrued into like this different way of viewing it, like even like convoluted in our minds, thinking like this person has to do with some negative emotion I'm feeling. And yeah, in some way, shape, or form, like they could have a little bit to do with it, but ultimately it wouldn't affect you if you didn't already have the space for it to be poked. If someone's pressing your buttons, you have a button to press. You know, it doesn't mean that it's bypassing the fact that they're doing that, especially when you're taking into account people that are aware of the fact that you have triggers. So this is not an excuse or a reason that, you know, for you to not feel that. It's more of just like a mental thing for yourself to know, because we could have people that have no idea about our triggers, and we could have people that know exactly about our triggers. And the thing is, they can do it all day, every day, or we can never know when it's coming. But what we can do for ourselves is navigate what to do when that happens. Navigate what to do when we're feeling in a vulnerable space of, you know, maybe not feeling certain about certain things in our life. And then we're on, say, Instagram or Facebook or social media or whatever vice you choose, and or magazines or watching TV or whatever it is, and you're feeling insecure and you're looking at things and you're feeling that like desire to be someone else different than yourself. Like, that's kind of where I feel like the identity part comes into this conversation, is like when you start realizing like that you're altering yourself from how you naturally are. And it's like there is medicine in that. You know, there's medicine to know when, you know, when you want to change something about yourself. Because like usually when you want to change something like your hair or your name or your nails or your outfits or whatever the case is, or getting a tattoo, usually that's indicative of something within yourself that you want to change. Like, you want to change something. So first we go to the physical layer. We're like, well, how am I looking? You know what? Let me go put some highlights in here. Let me cut my hair off. Let me do this. Let me get a tattoo. Let me go buy a shirt that is going to change my appearance, because it's something new. Not only are you getting high with the endorphins from it, but it's like it's giving you that satisfaction, maybe a little bit longer than like super short term, because you're like able to look at it and still get that same effect for a little bit, at least, that you're like, oh, let me put on my new shirt. So the thing that's interesting is like, this is like, in my opinion, perfectly designed. Like, this is perfectly designed to make us not go deeper, right? And go deeper is like, well, what do I want to change? What am I ready to let go of? What am I ready to move forward into? Once we start realizing that, like, you know, really, no matter what we wear or look like, this is an extension of us, you know, and it could be used as a beautiful creative tool, you know, or you as a human being are art, right? And if you are wanting to change, especially like a lot on the outside, you know, maybe there's something that's really asking and knocking on your door on the inside that could be looked at and viewed in a different way. And I know for me personally, like, I had a few different instances come up recently that had made me feel that way. I have grown like super attached to the logo that I had, right? The logo when I had like half periwinkle hair and half black hair or dark brown hair, and it was longer, and that's how my hair looked for a while. Like, that was the identity in which I was working with, and I didn't realize that I was putting weight on like my physical identity. You know, I know who I am and who I am at my core, and I'm very grateful for that, because, you know, in a world it's so easy to get lost. So I'm grateful that I understand like fundamentally who I am, but being a human is an interesting freaking experience, and like in that you might lose a few pieces of yourself, like down the block when you tripped on the sidewalk, and like a few months ago when you exited a toxic relationship. Like, not only did you let go of the toxic stuff, but you might let go of a positive part of yourself because you couldn't carry it with you at that moment, you know? So there's this thing, it's called like soul retrieval, that is something that is known in shamanistic, like in shamanism, or in just like indigenous ways in general, you know. And it's like I've been reading on this book. I've heard about it, and I've heard about it from a bunch of different people, and it's something that can be done and facilitated by a healer or curandera, like, you know, a medicine person. I haven't personally experienced that, but I was just reading this book. It's just something that I had found, you know, that I feel like continuously follows me, this like word and this terminology, but although I haven't like personally gone to somebody do it, but it's something that we do even in like the micro version, like that we can and have access to do for ourselves whenever we really want to. And that's kind of like sitting with ourselves and retrieving, sometimes even going back to physical places, or even just stating out loud, like, I reclaim all of the parts of me that I have left behind that are still, you know, resonant with my being and are for the best parts of me to move forward, you know, to call that, to acknowledge it. If you go into, like, you know, some people, if they experience a traumatic event, you know, and if you go back to the place and just like calling your spirit back, because sometimes like our spirit gets like detached from us, especially like near death experiences where we'll feel like, you know, like we left, because a part of us did, you know. And that's why I feel like a lot of people are walking around this world super numb. It's just another factor of like this, you know, perfectly designed to do this situation is like, if we're constantly traumatized and nobody's teaching us how to go back and retrieve these things, and if, in fact, that they're telling us that if you go back to retrieve it, you're even more of a failure. If you go backwards, you are even more, like, that is something that has been like put into our head. Like, you move out, if you move back into your family's house, that's it. Like, you didn't make it, you didn't do it, you know. And it's not factoring all of these other aspects that could be playing a part, you know. Like, for me personally, for example, like, I'll tell y'all straight up, like, I just moved back into my family's house. Why? A few different reasons, but, you know, have you seen the prices of rent in New York City? It's like, it's been a month-to-month basis. The fact that I even lasted this long was pretty, you know, impressive to me. And the fact that I was like swinging it with the income that I had for a while, you know. And then it reached a certain point where I'm like, I'm not going to be able to save money. Like, I'm not going to be able to do anything right now. And the fact that I have that accessible, I want to, like, I don't know if I want to, but I need to, and then a part of me wants to, and then I'm like, I get to, right? Now the gratitude comes in. It's like, I get to. The fact that I have the opportunity to do that is also super precious. The fact that I have the opportunity that at 26 years old, I get to go back to spend time with my family and integrate the lessons that I've learned over the years, and I get to like love them up real good before either I move out and I start, like, you know, I either I'm gonna move out and I'm gonna live alone again, or I'm gonna move out and I'm gonna start to begin like the extension of my family, you know, with whatever that looks like at that time. And either way, like, it's going to, it just changed the narrative of how I thought about things. And I was like, just thinking, like, I was speaking with a few different people, and specifically Indigenous people, and about this. And like, I was just saying how, like, I personally felt like a failure. Like, I didn't make it. Like, I made it out and now I can't make it by myself. And I felt very like incapable when that had came up. And you know, something that was said to me was like, we lived in communities like that. Like, it was uncommon for people to live alone. And if they did, it was usually for like short-term purposes, and it wasn't like this long-term experience. Like, we lived in community. You know, if you wanted to have a child, like, there's a reason it says it takes a whole tribe, you know, to raise a child. And like, it takes a whole city, not whole city, but whole community, you know. And we've been like almost brainwashed to believe that doing things like that and being around our family more, or being around, even creating like communities or communes or whatever the case is, because they're self-sovereign, why would this be glorified? You know, then we don't need to depend on people, places, and things that have a bunch of money and power in this day and age and world and country, especially, you know. It just wouldn't jive with the system. So why would that be glorified, you know? So I encourage any person, and it's interesting because even like as this process is going on, I realized, like, I was talking to a bunch of my friends, and almost each one of my friends has gone through this period where they moved out on their own, and then they went back, and then they moved out on their own, and they kind of stayed out. And like, not that I need to have that expectation, but that's kind of the naturally what I'm leaning towards. Like, I know, like, this is a temporary experience, and I'm going to kind of sort things out and then go to my next move and go to my next space. So it felt very like, wow, like, you know, number one, I'm not alone. Number two, like, this is a beautiful opportunity that I have to go back and retrieve also parts of myself, and also give parts of myself that I might have not been able to give to my family prior because of my triggers. Now, family and triggers are a very, very real thing. Like, if anyone's going to trigger you, like your family, like, they say you go out, you think you healed yourself, you think you did all these different things, and then you go back and you live with your family, and you see if you're not triggered, or how you navigate those triggers. So, like, our family innately triggers us because they have raised us and know us in certain parts, and like also don't know us in certain parts. So there's so many opportunities to feel misunderstood, to feel controlled, or all these different things that come up with our family, whether we're just visiting them, whether we live with them, whether we never moved out with them, whatever the case is, like, just even on the phone with them, whatever the case is, it's just how it goes with our family. But just as much as they trigger us, they're our triggers. Now let's look at our triggers just for a second. And rather than looking at it solely as something that is coming up for us that's causing us discomfort, we could also think of it as, this is an opportunity for me to heal something. And I actually am getting the opportunity, the awareness to look at it. If you can identify that you're triggered when you're triggered, you're already halfway there. If you're like, whoa, that triggered me. Like, I don't like that, and you get the opportunity to just sit with that for a little bit more. And, you don't have to find the root cause to everything the moment you discover that it exists. I'm going to say that one more time because I need to say it to myself. You do not need to discover the root cause of everything the moment you know it exists. Things take time. You learn that with age. We all think we got it all figured out. We've all heard it from our parents and from a whole bunch of elders around us, like, slow down. You got to be consistent, long term, this, that, and the third. And if you're anything like myself, you're like, yeah. But I'm going to do it different, though. Because just as unique as we can all be, we are all so similar in so many different ways. And we have so many different things that we just do that are just like alike, that we think are so different. I hear you, but I'm going to do it different. But there's like a system innately in our human, like, I don't know the word I was going to use, but just that we innately do as people, right? And one of them is think that we're so different. And then you'll find more people, and also think that you're the same. You'll look at someone, you'll find a similarity, and you'll talk about it, or if you find a difference, most of the time you're complaining about it. You could also look at it as a positive way, but that's usually how it comes out, like, fast wise. And some of those sayings are just sayings for a reason, like, take everything with a grain of salt. You hear that all the time thrown around, and it's like, yo, no, for real. Like, what is that saying? Like, let's unpack it for a second. Listen to what everyone has to say, but don't absorb everything that everyone has to say. So take it with a grain of salt. So, take that grain of salt is a piece of earth, so that could be grounding for you. Still remember that you have your own personality and your own core, right? So going back to being triggered too, going back to what we view as our identity, if I were to ask you right now, and I invite you, I'm going to ask you right now, although I can't hear you, you can hear you. So what do you view as your identity? Just give it space for a second. Just think about that. What is your identity? Not the definition. What is your personal identity? You as you. Some of us may feel like, I don't know. What do you mean? I don't know my identity. I'm just a person. I'm just me. I'm just Ash. I'm just, whoever you are. But what does that mean? I can't tell you what it means because I'm not you. So you got to figure it out. But that's my exercise for today. Because a lot of times we think we know who we are. We think we know what we stand for, what we view as identity. And then once we start breaking it down, we lose words. Because it's like the more I experience with myself, the more I am present and in the moment, the less of a need I feel to have to change things about myself. And, here comes the cliche ones, like, accept yourself, love yourself. You are perfectly designed as you, and absolutely. I completely agree with what you're saying, that it changes every few years. Like, I feel like our external shell of our identity, goes through these different remissions, or not remissions, but transitions rather, of these different versions. Like we're onions, we're garlic, we're just peeling back the layers back and forth. So each layer could still be an onion or a piece of garlic, but it's just, and it could look similar even, but it's deeper to the core. So less things need to be on the outside. And when I realized it doesn't mean that you can't, alter yourself. Like, I'm still going to get tattoos. I'll still do things to my hair. I'll still dress crazy. Like, so what I'm saying is to not do that. You know what I mean? To not do that isn't what I'm trying to go at when I talk about our identity, and when I'm saying the different aspects of like what we could view or not view as our identity. It's more just like paying attention to the reason why we do what we do. So even like circling back to something that had came up with triggers and identity, is like, I realized maybe like 6 months ago when individuals would call me Akasha, and like, which, was like a gifted name to me from spirit, that I had in this like really this profound experience that was just like one thing leading into another, with like all these synchronicities in this really intense way. Once I literally gave up the fact that I wasn't going to get a name outside of my name. So it's interesting how it came up. I realized that for the past like 6 months, every time someone says Akasha, like I feel like this little pull in my belly, which I love the name. Like, I genuinely love that name so much. I still have so much love for that name and think it's so beautiful. And I was just wondering, like, what is this pull? What is this little like squeeze that I'm feeling? And it was only becoming greater over time, which triggers do. I didn't know it was a trigger, but it was pulling up to be a trigger. So like a lot of times, so even with triggers, like they start off just like a little thing, a little annoyance, almost like a buzz, and then the buzz gets closer and closer and closer, and then you swat it and you realize that shit has been annoying you this whole week, like, or however long it's been annoying you, because now you swat. That was the natural reflex. You didn't want it near you, right? That's how triggers are, and that's how they develop in a lot of times, in a lot of ways, once we give it awareness. It's not that we, aren't getting triggered. It's that we might not be aware of the fact that we're getting triggered. We might just call it, I'm pissed. I'm in a bad mood. That bothered me. I don't like that person, So when this behavior started happening, I started noticing it. I was like, I would look at the person who would say, I would look at how I felt, like, I feel like this, because I had it separated. Like, if I was just doing some human shit, just call me Ash. Like, if you know me like that, you call me Ashley, if you don't know me like that, just keep it at Ash. But like, or if it was something like more spiritual, like I'm doing a reading, I'm doing moon ceremony, whatever the case was, it was more of Akasha. And then there's some places that I had some spaces that I felt called to kind of introduce myself as that. And that's also what my Instagram handle was, my email, all this different stuff. So all of this different stuff has been built onto this identity that I've been having for, this addition to my identity, this add-on, because I didn't resonate with the name Ashley growing up, there wasn't many Ashleys that necessarily like looked like me or like came from similar spaces or backgrounds that I have. And it was very like, invalidating to what I was trying to figure out myself as being. And always people be like, you don't look like an Ashley, like you don't look like, this, that, and there. And I'm like, okay, like I'm just gonna internalize that as a child. And then, kids are kids, and kids like say some like douchey shit, and like I would get joked on like, oh, ashtray, whatever corny stuff would go on, like. So I didn't like the nickname Ash. Like only some people would call me that too. So growing up, I'm like, like I would have like these random nicknames for like, but it would never stick. I would never like them either. It would just be like whatever, like just like kind of whatever it was. And then it hit that point where that had came to me, and I had finally surrendered. Like I'm probably never gonna get a spirit name or whatever the case is. And then that name came in, but that name was attached to so many people, places, and things at the time that I don't resonate with anymore. So I was just like, noticing it every so often. I would be like, all right, why is that bothering me? Oh, maybe it's because, it reminds me of this person and this ceremony and this location and all of the people that I was associated with at that time. And, so I would just like kind of put logic to the trigger every once and again. And I didn't, but once again, I did not unpack the entire thing in one shot. This happened over the course of like 6 months. Now, the pimple popping moment where it came to a head was a week ago. I was just laying in bed at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was just like, I don't want to just be ether anymore. Because Akasha means ether, right? Akasha means ether in Sanskrit. So I was like, I don't want to just be ether anymore. I don't want to just be the invisible force that helps all of the other elements come together and do things. I don't want to just be dark matter anymore, where no one understands me or sees me. Like I want to be, I want to be grounded with the earth. I want to communicate like the wind and be directed like the wind, and have the passion of the fire and the ability to burn things away that no longer serve me like the fire, and cleanse me and hydrate me like the water. Like I want to encompass all facets of myself. And it was just like a deeper, now I'm saying it out loud. At the moment, it felt like it was just like a subtraction of self, but also now that I'm saying it, it's like a deeper appreciation and understanding, acceptance of myself, right? So I was just like, I don't think I want to be called Akasha anymore, because if you're calling me Akasha, right? Which, listen, like, mind you, if you're listening to this and you know me and you say Akasha, like, I'm not gonna be mad at you. It was really like a self-proclaimed thing for myself. Like, I'm not triggered now at this point because I've already like addressed it within me. So it's like, but anytime our names invoke things, words invoke things. So if you're saying Akasha, like you're calling upon the ether within me, right? So now I could be just macking, and then all of a sudden maybe I won't feel as grounded, which works if you're asking me something like spiritual. If I'm doing a reading, that works in that case, right? But if I'm just trying to like mac and then I'm called Akasha, then like it's like ungrounding, it's so. That's why names are so interesting. They're so important and they're so not important at the same time. Like I forget everybody's name, but then I remember their sign. I'm like, oh, that's what they just call us in this lifetime. So things are important, whatever we put energy to. And for whatever reason, this flavor of an identity deepening, you want to call it crisis, you want to call it whatever, the opportunity I'm having to look deeper within my own self and my identity is giving me the space to look at my name and accept my name, and also like just understand what do I want to be invoked. Like the name Ashley actually is a unisex name that when it had came to America then started to be more female, which I thought was interesting. And then also it's the binder of the above world, the lower world, and the keeper of the middle world. So in all senses of it. And so Ashley comes from the term from the ash tree, right? And the ash tree is a really beautiful tree, and it's like it's a tree, so it's grounding, right? So it's a balancer, And if it's anything in my life that makes sense, is like balance. Like I'm always like, find your balance, DualiTEA, like all these things, yin and yang, all the things that I've done to show and associate balance. It's like once we realize, even when it comes to like, especially when it comes to like, well, really anything, like it's not just spirituality, but I'll use that for the example right now. You know, we do all these rituals, and these rituals aren't what is powerful. It's us doing it that's powerful. It's the awareness. So like you'll do certain things and you realize like you don't need to do it as much because you are living it, right? You're now living the ceremony. You don't need to do 7 ceremonies or go to them. You're living the ceremony by you're carrying the things out. Like you can go to 7 different ceremonies. You can go to ayahuasca ceremony. You can have all of these incredibly huge realizations. But more ends, like all of the things that you're looking for. Because if you just have these big realizations and you don't have that integration period, you are not going to be able to fulfill and bring out all of the things, applying what you learn. That's why you find a bunch of super intelligent, talented people not as successful as their potential, is capable of, because, you know, they're not following through with what they know, right? There's that action portion, which can get difficult if we allow ourselves to be in our mind. Now, the more we get into the moment and the present and the surrender, which is innately the trust within a higher power, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, you know, Father, Sky, Great Spirit, like the energy outside of us is trusting that we do our best, and then trusting that, you know, God, Creator, has our back and is going to also take care of that 20% or however percent that we couldn't do, but knowing that we did our best to do it. So as long as we apply that in everything that we do, I think what we do, you know, that's the best thing you can do. Like, and we forget that sometimes. So what I was noticing with this whole like thing, with this whole, my attachment to this picture. So anytime I feel really attached to something, I have to like, I tend to like pause and then eventually remove. But like I'll take a step back because I'm like, I really like this picture. I'm so obsessed with it, but my hair don't look like that anymore, so it's not authentic. And then that's how I felt about Akasha. I'm like, I love Akasha. Like, I love that part of myself. I love that name. I love that look. I love everything about her and me and that. But that's not all I am, you know, and I would be limiting myself to just go solely by that, you know? So that's been like a big realization recently. I think it's really funny because most of the people that know me long term, or like just know me before I was going as that, or even in the beginning of going as that, are like, oh, okay, good. Seems like you're accepting yourself more. Like they're saying that without saying that. They're just like, Like every person I said that and that's had that reaction, it's like the same thing. And I'm like just giggling to myself because I've also felt their resistance to that, because not because it's not a great name, not because of the way it came to me. It's beautiful. All these things are beautiful. But because I was almost leaning on that as more of an identity than an extension or a part. And I feel like that happens all the time too. Like that happens when we worship things, you know, when we look at things like and pour our all into it. Like there's so many different practitioners that, you know, might fixate on one particular deity and that becomes their personality. But that's just meant to amplify one part of your personality, because all of these deities that are around us or that you learn from in all different religions aren't meant to just be like okay, that's that person, now you want to emulate them. And the same thing goes for celebrities. Like anything outside of yourself is to show you what part of yourself you want to like maybe repair, fixate if you admire it. Maybe you see someone like an Aphrodite, right? You know, an Aphrodite energy, and you're not really super comfortable with being in your divine divine feminine. maybe you should explore that more. That might look like 2 years of you worshiping Aphrodite until realizing that you're really trying to worship that part of yourself and invoke that part of yourself. So I think that that's what's so important too when moving in this. And then that goes for like the same thing with celebrities. Like I can't personally resonate to that because I don't necessarily have a particular celebrity that I feel that way towards, but I'm sure that would happen the same way. I've had that experience with deities. I'm sure that would happen the same way with celebrities if that was something I was more interested in. You know, so it's just about not getting lost, not losing our identity in losing our identity or feeling unsure in it, but rather finding root grounding and anchoring in losing what we think are parts of our identity might just be parts of our ego that have constructed these beautiful ways to dress up, you know? I learned that I've been learning that with my hair. Like I've been having such a journey with my hair. I realized like I have not known how to style my hair my whole life, and that every place that I've went to like the wrong kind of hair salons for my hair type, and like how every 5 years I fry my hair off. And I was like sitting with that, and I'm like, if I didn't fry my hair off every 5 years, I would not cut it. Like in the past, like I would not cut it because I don't like to cut my hair. I like my hair being super long. But energetically, what's been going on in the past 5 years and then the 5 years before that, I damn sure needed to cut my hair because our hair stores energy. So I needed to get that off me. But I know I wouldn't have done it if I didn't go through some kind of chemical process that I fried my hair and then I cut it, because I only cut it when it's the last resort. And that has been like something I've been noting, like, wow, now I think I got it. I think I got the lesson this time. Like, I mean, don't quote me on it, but maybe quote me on it. Hold me accountable. Now I'm going on this hair journey where I'm allowing my hair to, go back into a natural state. I found somebody who knows how to work with my hair, and I'm going to be doing more of these different treatments and bring it back to kind of, revive the parts of it that have been broken and bond it with it, and use Olaplex and things of that sort. But regardless, it's another journey. And I'm like, who am I without my periwinkle and contrasting two-sided hair, although my hair is still like two-sided? Like, who am I without this specific aesthetic that I've grown such an attachment to? That people have looked on my business cards, boom, I don't match my business card anymore. But I do, because it's me, and it's still my bangs, and it's still my eyebrows, and it's still my sparkle on my face. But it's not the exact aesthetic that I had. If I did put Akasha on it, I would have had to take that off. I didn't. But it takes courage to be able to be like, you know what, that's not me no more. Because now I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, what are you going to say to me? What, you don't know who you are? You this and third? Like, I know who I am. I'm just learning who I am more and more each day. But I also know that I don't know shit. So it's like, what am I afraid of? To be embarrassed that I changed? That I wanted to do something different? Or even revert? Because in fact, I'm going back, My Instagram handle, this way. My Instagram handle is my name backwards, right? They sure as shit did not have Ashley's Reality available because pretty common name. Nor did they have Ash's Reality. So I'm going back, but I'm also going forward. That's where I'm at. Shit's pretty freaking weird, but it's good. I feel like grounded about it. I feel like I'm pretty graceful about it, I moved. I sacrificed privacy for like the ability to, actually live instead of just survive. And I get to do that. I get to reclaim my different versions of myself. I get to reclaim my name. And this time, say it with more pride and in a very grounded way. It's the name that my mother gave me. My mother and my father chose that name. So yeah, I get to claim that in in a way of being like proud of myself and like everything that I've been, everything that I am, and everything I will be. And yeah, you know, that's kind of where I'm at. And I invite anybody who has been feeling, whether they ever experienced any of these things or whether they are going to or whether they are right now, you know, if you're triggered by anything, rather than looking at trigger as your enemy, looking at triggers as our teachers and finding like the grounding in who we are as a way to like, you know, get ourselves out. I noticed that for me, like anytime I feel triggered or, you know, out of my body, especially when it's like a really intense trigger where I'm like super angry or anxious, if I just start focusing on myself, I can get myself out of it. If I feel possessive, if I feel jealous, if I feel anything, I'm a human. I have these emotions, you know. For me, my solution that I've found works the best thus far is like, if I have the time to be worried or concerned about someone else or something outside of myself that's affecting me, I'm not paying enough attention to myself. So I encourage you, especially in those moments where you're like really feeling that high emotion and stress, like pay attention to yourself. Like fuck anything and everything else. Like that is not what's important. If you're having a panic attack and you're still continuing to let your mind go, you're only going to stay in that hysteric place. Give yourself attention. That's what these triggers are desperately like asking of us. Like they're like, hey, I'm hurt. I was hurt here. Love me in this space. No matter how embarrassing it is, no matter how weird it is, no matter what it looks like to anybody else, it doesn't matter. What matters the most is how you view yourself, you know, and how you show up for yourself, how you take care of yourself in these uncomfortable moments. Because no one's going to do it for you. No one has the capacity to. And if they do, then that will just be a little bridge for a mild codependent, little void filling for a little bit until that blows up in your face and you realize that you're both kind of just distracting yourselves with each other. All of these things play out to all relationships, interpersonal, romantic, everything. You know, we have the opportunity that when we notice we're being triggered by someone, sometimes they're supposed to be triggered. Or else how are you going to change? If someone's your comfort all day long, is that there's no growth there? Like you can't be comfortable all the time. You know what I'm saying? Even if you really trust that person and you really like, no matter like whether that's your best friend, your partner, someone in your family, you could really trust that person. But if you're not at least comfortable every once and again, like nothing is growing in that place. You know, nature has to undergo uncomfort to get to the next place. It's a part of transition. It's metamorphosis, you know? So maybe next time you get triggered, looking at it as like, this is my opportunity to transform. What am I transforming? What's coming up? You know? Yeah. So that's what I got for today. Thank you for tuning in. I have this one deck of cards that I'm going to pull one. Funny enough, I actually lost it. And if I didn't move this table, I wouldn't have found it. It was like one of the last things I got retrieved from my apartment before I moved out yesterday. So I haven't used it in a really long time. It's the Gods and Titans deck. So bringing in that like archetype, not only archetype, but masculine archetype, which is really cool because I feel like that's not something that is as common, especially in oracle decks. So we got some male characters here. So whether you're female, male, anything in between, or not claiming of any, you know, we all have masculine and feminine energy. So this applies to everybody. who is open to listen, who is open to having their cards pulled. If you aren't, then it's not for you. Okay. I'm just clearing the cards. They were stagnant. They were like under my table for a while, so I'm definitely gonna like clear these up real quick. I pray in a good way, Great Spirit, into all of the energies of this card to help us, and anyone who is open to receiving a reading here and now. What is the message that we are supposed to receive? Let this transcend time and space, that this message comes up to whoever is supposed to hear it. I'm laughing because 3 cards just came out on their own. And sometimes I feel like, I put my boundary up with cards sometimes, and I'm like, hey, I didn't pull you, let me put them back. But it just felt right. So the 3 cards that came out is Biyami, beauty, balance, which is Vishnu, and abundance, which is Green Man. So I'm going to show you guys. That's beauty. Oh, there we go. We got Vishnu, which is balance. Oh, that's a nice focus that camera just did. Nice. And then we got the Gray Man with abundance. These are beautiful cards. So the message that's coming up is, it's like just so awesome how cards do this, and just anything shows up like that where it's so literal. Allowing ourselves just as we are, unaltered, and accepting that part of us is the beauty and the balance, but also like knowing that we want to change things and allowing ourselves to change things, but with the knowing of why. So if you want to change your hair color, like know why you want to change your hair color. Maybe you got triggered. So while you're changing your hair color, it can be symbolic of the change that you're undergoing. So it's not just, I want to change my hair color because I'm bored. I want to change my hair color because I want to change the way that I'm thinking, because maybe the way that I'm thinking is no longer suiting me anymore. So now every time you look at your hair, you're reminded about that change. And it's like, rather than this change being this like uncomfortable thing, which it still is, it can be finding beauty in the uncomfort. And every time you look at that change that you did, or that tattoo that you got, or that hair color that you changed it to, like you are embracing it, right? So that's what helps us find balance, which innately helps us. If we're balanced, then we're able to walk on 2 feet, and when we're able to walk on 2 feet, then we're grounded. Like you can't be balanced and not be. You can't be grounded and not be balanced. And balance is not a destination. It's not a place. Well, how do I word it? Balance is not a like location or a place. It's the journey. Like it's the path, It's like it's always going to look and feel different. It might be going up and down, but it's like in motion. Like balance isn't a one place. It's a motion. Balance is motion, which is like contrary to what it can appear like at times. And ultimately, the abundance, everything we want, like everything we want is going to come from the surrender of what we are and the embrace of what we are, unaltered and altered and everything in between, and the journey of what that looks like, just bringing the awareness in between all of those lessons and moments. So yeah, that's what I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Happy 222.